look at that. Okay, I'm going to call the Ordinance Subcommittee meeting of April 30th to order. Let me just get my agenda up. So it is a little past 5:15, 5:25, and all of us are here. Does not look like we have any minutes to approve. Is there anybody here to public speak time?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
Annette Siegel, Mutter Street. Are there ordinances for how many unregistered vehicles you can have in your driveway?
There is.
Okay.
And the limit is one unregistered vehicle in your driveway.
So who do you report?
That would be, well, I've heard Chief Alberti talk about enforcing that.
Okay.
So it would either be him or it would be the building inspector.
Okay.
But those are I would say, the first two places to check.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, continuing business. It seems like the only, so we have our, yes?
Good. I thought you were going to say we don't need to talk about the community ordinance, but I
No, we
actually
can.
have some information.
Yep, I think that's fine. Maybe we'll do the multi-passenger bike first,
Okay.
since we have our multi-passenger bike
Let's do it.
people. So, yeah. Hi.
Hi again.
So, I think that the last time we met was at the site visit, potentially, other than our attempted meeting. Has there been any updates or anything that's happened since then that you wanted to share with us?
Well, first I wanted to hear what you guys had to say, but one of the first meetings when I was with the licensing board and then came over here, they said there's no place, there's no legislation or anything on BYOB in Easthampton.
Mm-hmm.
And then during my research and my visits to local places, I found out that Captain Jack's is BYOB.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people were afraid of, how are you going to monitor this? How are we going to take care of it? How are we going to keep control over you? So the question I have for everyone here is, how do you keep control over there? And I've been there before, and there is no monitoring of alcohol versus us being right in your face as you're drinking and observing what you're doing. So I just have some questions about that and how that came about. I tried finding the minutes, but it doesn't go back far enough.
Well, I mean, I can probably shed a little light on that. So BYOB is a loophole that kind of exists for restaurants, that don't have liquor licenses.
Yeah.
I would say that the primary distinction is that a BYOB establishment is on private property, is in a contained space, and I can't remember if they have to follow any specific guidelines or not. I think Kelly Ritchie would probably know that more, but that's something that I think is, it's interesting example, but I would say that probably the primary distinction would be that it's on private property, not on a public property.
So the thing that is beating us up with the bike is we're not technically property. We're moving. And
Yeah.
so that's where I'm trying to come across, saying that nothing happens off of this bike, and I don't know honestly how to go about it anymore, but by saying it's just going to be so regulated on this bike, it's much more difficult than a bar or a restaurant or anything to get off the bike. That's one thing that Chief Alberti was afraid of, was people just walking around downtown with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said in the rules I gave you, like I said when we were on the bike, if you leave the seat, it's dumped in a bucket, you're done. There's no more, and it's completely regulated with a tip certified person.
Sure.
And so I just wonder about that, and I've been to the breweries and I've been to some restaurants where there's also drinking outside, and there's also no monitoring there either. So I think that's where we win in our situation, is it's overprotected almost, and that's how we're going to be successful, and that's how we're going to continue to be safe.
Yeah.
So I have a comment.
Yeah.
So I am not with you on the the breweries, and why nobody's monitoring them. My presumption is they have a liquor license.
They do.
And there is no way they're gonna do anything to lose that. So I've been in the breweries as well, and while they don't stand over you, they are very cognizant of what's going on at all times. And so I don't buy the argument that they're not paying attention, so we're gonna be much better than them. I think
No, it was
there's-
just an example.
I think-
I'm not throwing them under the
No,
bus.
I know. But I think we need to kind of separate that your concept is very unique. And we have a lot of folks in town who have patios and whatever for the liquor, and they do a really nice job. We have not detected that there's a problem with any of that. So, you know, what we don't know is this. That, you know, those are knowns. This is an unknown. So, it's okay. That was my only comment. We
Okay.
can go into more discussion around it after you're done with your
Councilor Zare.
points.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest distinction is that we have an open container policy, and your multi-passenger quadricycle, motorized quadricycle, is not a floating business entity when it's on our public ways. And that in and of itself is a huge barrier, and not to mention that there is no model to license such a moving entity.
And that's what we're here to create, isn't that?
Well, no, that's what you're requesting, but
Yeah.
we're not necessarily here to create that.
So what is the holdback? Is what I'm trying to say? Because that.
Well, so I think, so I can help, hopefully help you understand this. So the open container ordinance that we have basically does not allow any public consumption of alcohol outside of private property. So unless there's specific permission
Coach
and
Boss
a
likes.
one-day permit. And the reason for that is and I actually drafted that with the chief a few years ago because we were having a problem with people drinking over here in the graveyard
Yeah.
and by the pond. And so we wanted to have a local tool to be able to mitigate that. Now, I think one of the things that is causing a little consternation is that, you know, if you go to a restaurant, there's a reasonable expectation that you might be exposed or exposing your family or yourself to alcohol, even if it's BYOB. I think that potentially the concern is that if you have a moving entity on a public way, bike path, I guess it's a public way, then you might be exposing people who are not necessarily under the expectation that they would be exposed to people consuming alcohol. And I think that an important thing to recognize here is that, you know, there is a lot of people that might not understand the concept, might not understand the kind of nuances of, you know, how much training the person who's going to be on the bike is going to get, and that type of thing. And my concern is that if we brought something forward that said, let's waive the open container law for this quadricycle on the bike path, my concern would be that it would not pass the full council. And if it did not pass the full council, you would not be able to bring it back to the council for 2 years. So, and that's a real thing that you have to consider. Now, if we said, you know, as it stands, you know, what we're going to do is we're not going to necessarily, we're not going to waive the open container law, but we're going to, you know, see how, you know, potentially put some requirements. You know, I think there's this ordinance that we got has some pretty like reasonable expectations that were put out there, like, you know, a permit and you know, some requirements. You know, if we did that and said, hey, let's give it a shot, and in a year take stock of how it went, maybe people will be more comfortable with it, maybe it's not gonna, but that at least we'd have the option to reassess and look at what potentially, you know, because it's a real concern that if this let's say I said, okay, I'm going to draw up this exception and bring it to the full council, and then we had, I'm pretty sure that it would not pass, and if it didn't pass,
Because no
then-
one knows anything. One of the counselors didn't even look at the pictures when I brought it. He just passed it.
Yeah, well, and so one of them actually voted to not even allow it to come to committee. So I mean, so you're kind of, there is a little bit, obviously there's some concern, and it's not necessarily that they don't know or understand it. It's more of they might just be philosophically, don't have, they don't agree with it, or maybe they're just not open-minded to it. But I would say that if we brought it forward, if it failed, then you'd be stuck. You wouldn't have any options after the first year. This could potentially be, if you guys do your yoga trips and do your brewery tours and do those types of things, and people get used to it and are comfortable with it, then next year, then you could at least bring it back and say, hey, this would really help us out, and it could be put back to consideration. There wouldn't be a moratorium on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Right now, we had 5 people try to book, and I said, well, we're not approved for BYOB yet, and they said, well, we're going to hold off on booking until hopefully that happens. So the business is artificially most likely not going to exist. I mean, we're going to push it no matter what. We already have everything. It's already been on the trail. You guys can.
Yep.
But back to what you were saying. So Springfield has recently updated their BYOB rules, and they revisit it every year, and there's a new $25 fee every year. So I brought the rules today, and I'm going to email them to you. And the only difference with this is they just require it to be a restaurant or somewhere serving food. So we're going to be serving snacks on there to purchase, but
You're not a licensed restaurant.
yeah, no,
You're
and
not
that's
inspected by the health inspector. You don't have any of the licensure required to operate a restaurant, and you're operating on a public way. You're not operating on private
no.
property.
I understand. I just
Yep.
I don't know what other ways to approach. I mean, I've been sending information. I've been trying to. I feel like it's just negativity coming from you guys, and no one's trying to find any light in this at all. When we're gonna be bringing like over like 40 people, 40 tourists a day to these shops, to these places, to a place that hasn't existed for the person in Keene that reached out to me, to the person in Boston, to the person in Connecticut. And I just keep hearing negativity from this, but outside of this room, it's nothing but positivity. Do I have to bring 200 people to like a
Maybe.
big city council meeting?
Maybe.
If I have to, I'll get out there and get people.
Yeah, I mean.
I have had no help from Easthampton.
I sense that you're getting a little upset, and I appreciate that, because you put a lot of money into this. So
It's more time. I don't care about the money right now. It's the time.
Yeah.
And it's just the lack of like help from people. I want you to say, you know what, Nick? It's not going to pass from the city council, but if you try going this way, it might work that way. If you can do that. I just haven't had any assistance in any way, and I've been calling all over the country, and that's what I'm looking for. That
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. Do you want to speak?
No, go ahead.
Councilor Connell? It sounds like you were about to say something.
Nope.
Sure. You started to say something.
Do you have something?
No, I was waiting to hear what you
No,
had to say.
so you may not like what I'm about to say.
It's
I will
okay.
say it
I've
in
heard it
as
all.
calm a voice as I can possibly say it. You have not sold, and it's not because you're doing anything wrong. You're going and getting the information, and I appreciate that. I have read a lot of stuff. All of it, to me, you're doing all the right things. There is nothing more, in my opinion, there's no stones you have left unturned. And for that, I thank you and I appreciate it. For me, in my position representing all of the city, because I'm an at-large councilor,
of course.
I have to look at this beyond just what I might think, and what I have heard, and what I also personally believe is that I do not like the idea of people drinking going down the bike path. I just don't like it, and I'm not sure how I can get you to get me to like it. I don't know that you can.
Now,
I
are
just
you afraid
fundamentally
of-
don't like it.
Are you afraid of just people seeing it, or are you afraid
Yeah.
of the safety?
Well, a couple of things. I think if people drink too much, they can easily fall off those seats. Easily. Like, I almost fell off of it. I was
I can
sitting-
still see. I can put seatbelts on there.
So that, to me, is a concern. It's kind of big. You get, so there was what, 5 or 6 of us on there? You get 11 or however many it holds. That might be loud, because, you know, first of all, you're having a party if you're on there. You're gonna be,
Is there a noise ordinance on the rail trail?
No.
nope.
And that's our host's job to keep it down. I'm not trying to go against you here, but that's our job to keep it at a certain decibel, because we don't want to piss people off. And I know we're big, but we're also slow, and we do pull to the side for people. And I understand your concerns about people falling off seats. We could put seatbelts on there. That's very simple. And I don't know if you've been on the bike. I've seen a lot of people leave the breweries on bikes. I mean, that's not legal. I understand that, but I don't know. I emailed you guys when I first started about the accidents. Every accident that's ever happened on these bikes, and none of them are people falling off intoxicated.
I have a quick question,
Go
just
for it.
in regards to your describing the vehicle as a bike. So, do you have any documentation that supports that this is actually an electric assisted bike? Because the definition of an electric assisted bike is that the motor works only when people are pedaling, not that there's actually an independent motor that can run the vehicle. Do you have documentation on the state level from the DMV or anyone like that actually?
DMV wouldn't touch it because it's not a vehicle.
Right, so my concern is that this is actually a motorized vehicle that does have a ability to power it with pedals, but it's not necessarily meets the definition of electric assisted vehicle. Electric assisted vehicle only works when someone's pedaling and there's a motor assist, not an independent motor propelling it.
So I may not be following you, but the people that are like going up the hill over here, just riding up, not pedaling, that's not electric assist without them pedaling?
Well, I mean, that's an ongoing discussion.
Does it charge it? Because I've been trying to put an alternator on this thing. if that's the thing,
Well, the bike share bikes have motors that charge, and I think that they work when you're coasting, but they have a finite charge, but they're charged by the pedaling and work with the pedaling.
don't they plug in when you put them in the rack?
I think they do.
Yeah.
They do get recharged when you park them.
I don't know, but they don't have a throttle on them.
There's a little button.
I haven't run them on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a discussion that we're having about bicycles, but that is a concern of mine, and that this is kind of a motorized vehicle masquerading as a bicycle. Well, not a bicycle, a quadricycle also. But that's a whole other discussion to have.
Yeah.
I would echo, first of all, I want to say once again, I think this is a great entrepreneurial idea. I don't think anyone, I think what you're sensing as negativity is exactly what Councilor Conniff says, that we have a responsibility to really think about how this works in the city, and specifically how this works in terms of an application like that. And we've mentioned a bunch of times in terms of use, in terms of commercial use of the bike path, in terms of our open container laws, in terms of the vehicle in general. I also have concerns about the size, but that's something I'm willing to talk more about. I think that the I agree with Councilor Derby that I think that the BYOB is kind of a I don't think that that's a really viable discussion at this point.
Right.
And I think we should focus more potentially on framework to figure out how to make your business successful without that.
Right. At least, you know, I mean, and that's not us being negative. It's us being realistic. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things that I want to make sure that, you know, my role on the council is that when people have interesting ideas and want to bring them forward, I want to do what I can to help them. But I feel like if I brought something forward around open consumption on this bike, it wouldn't help you. And that's my concern. I want to see you guys be successful, but I also know where the other, you know, where other counselors are on this. And I don't think
I haven't even cared to reach out, even with all my
and
emails,
I don't think they're and I think it probably is because I don't think they're ready. So, you know, but a lot of times what people fear is things that they don't know or understand, things that are new. And so that's why I think that, you know, if we were trying to sandbag you, we'd be like, all right, we'll bring this forward, and then it'll just get shot down, and then you won't be able to come back for 2 years.
I get that.
Well, or we'd create an ordinance that
or-
just restricts you outright, which
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
Right.
And
So
that would be a problem.
you know, and there's one thing that you will not, you know, that you cannot characterize me as, which is anti-business, because I want Easthampton, and I have, in my tenure here, I've tried to support as many business ventures as I can, and I think that, you know, I want to support you guys. I think that your idea is really cool, and I, you know, even with some of the concerns that have been brought up around the implementation on the bike path, I think that it has enough merit that those things can get worked around. And so, you know, and I don't want to lead you on thinking that we're going to be able to do something around the open consumption, because I feel like that would be something that would end up turning around and biting us. Just because I don't think it would pass.
So,
And
so
I'm not
what's-
trying to be
So
negative.
what's the next step? You said there was no stone left unturned. You guys have seen the bike. What is my next step?
I would say
When I walk out of here,
I would
what do I
say
do?
your next step would be to do your best to try to get people to do the brewery tours, to do the yoga things, and just say, you know, this is something that we're going to work on, that we're going to try to get for next season. And I think that maybe if you have a successful season on the trail, and people see that you're respectful and you do your due diligence, and people are, you know, begin to understand your presence at the breweries, people are like, oh, that's so cool, that's a really interesting way to do this, you know, then I think that next year that could potentially alleviate maybe some of the concerns that other councilors have around the open consumption piece, and be like, hey, these guys are responsible, they're good, and, you know, maybe that's not the worst thing that can happen. And I can't guarantee that that's what people are going to say, but I also, you know, I don't really know what other options are on the table.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, I think it's also important, I really like a lot of the language in the Ann Arbor ordinance, and I think it's important to almost, in order to legitimize your business and to make sure that some of these unanswered questions are answered, that we do kind of create our own framework, which I think, you know, now
I
that
think if we
we
could-
have it, I think
yeah.
we could do it pretty quickly, certainly within the next month.
Yep.
Maybe by the next meeting,
I was just going to say, I will say, though, that there is wording in here that is very specific about not operating the vehicle in Ann Arbor on any pedestrian walkways.
right, so we have to.
They
yeah.
We'd
have
have to
thought of
change that.
that
Right.
and went, nope.
Well,
Yeah.
pedestrian walkways. A bike trail is different than that because bikes can't go on walkways.
It's not a bike trail, it's a rail trail.
But either way,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a multi- it's a
pedestrian.
multi-
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we will have specific language that uses the word manhand rail trail and discusses the methods
Limiting
and modes
it
and
to-
yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's just a thing outside of the box.
Yep.
Say we get off the rail trail and we just do streets,
Mm-hmm.
because you could get to every brewery by street.
Yep.
So what would be different with the BYOB approach with that? If we're going downtown, starting at Amy's, going the back streets over here, over to New City, and then the back streets to Fort Hill.
I don't know if that would change
It's still open
Might be
container.
people's concerns about open containers
And it might,
in public.
actually, it might have a worse connotation, because now
That's why I'm trying to
if you're
avoid
in the
the
streets, now traffic's going to slow down, and that street,
Oh, I know.
But it's still a non-starter because you'll still have open container restrictions.
Yeah.
And I
If
think
you're
that's
not a coach bus or a limousine or.
and I think that's what potentially, you know, some of the counselors would be concerned about.
have you sent each counselor an invitation? Or have you picked up the phone and called Dan Risk?
No.
Are you waiting for him to call you?
No, absolutely not.
My
I've
recommendation.
sent emails, but
My recommendation is that you personally reach out to them and give them an invitation to see it.
Meet them at Fort Hill for a beer.
Make them, yeah. Maybe
Not
not.
kidding.
But I believe that shows intent and that you do want them to understand. And other ordinances
idea.
in play do that
Mhm.
for just that reason. You want them to know you personally, and you
Mhm.
want them to know about your business personally, not a representation that we might give to them in however long it takes us to get this back to them. I think that would go a long way,
Yeah.
personally. So I would give them all individual, not like a here's city council, individually,
Yep.
call them by name, and ask them to meet you first without the bike.
Are there numbers on the
On the website. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, everybody's numbers on the website.
Yep.
And that way you can kind of get a feel for what their concerns are.
Yeah.
And address them either right in that meeting or go and come back.
Mhm. And the way, ordinances work is, if something comes to us, then, we'll, for example, like, we didn't have any formal or any obligation to take this up as a committee. We did it because we were interested and we wanted to try to, look at this thing and potentially try to help it forward.
Yeah.
And then I think it became apparent that the BYO, or the open consumption, was going to be a sticking point. But we want to, like I said, we want to encourage this as a novel way to come to Easthampton, to see the things that there are to do here, and because I think that could be a really cool piece of this, and I understand that the open consumption thing is a part of the model, and that it's a blow to not be able to get it, but I think it would be a bigger blow to have an extended period of time when you absolutely were forbidden from even bringing it forward.
When does Food Truck Friday start?
May 28th.
Yeah. So I mean, and so knowing,
So that,
all of that
Yeah.
stuff,
yeah, like knowing that the Food Truck Fridays, all the Mill Pond Lives, all those things, because you could even, I mean,
people rides on it.
yeah, yeah.
Hands on.
Yeah, so I think that I would love. I can't wait to see you guys be successful, and I personally don't have as many reservations around the open consumption, but I'm just one person, and I guess I have some reservations about it, but probably not as many as other people. But of course.
Okay, I'm representing actually the Manhattan Rail Trail because I'm on the committee.
Oh.
And they're still, they know it's out of their hands, or our hands, that it has to do with you and everything. There's still a lot of, concerns about, the size of the vehicle on the trail. And, they're just really, really worried. It's not
Were they
even.
invited to the thing a couple of weeks ago?
I
The
don't
Manhattan
know.
Rail
I
Trail?
don't think so.
Someone came from.
Well, Annette was there.
Yeah.
Another guy.
Have you been back?
Oh, yeah,
to
Wendy
Manhattan?
was. Yeah, they were.
Have
Wendy
you been
came.
back to them to meet with them again?
I have not. We've been involved here.
Yeah, see, there was also the little misconception in the very beginning when you went to them, you never mentioned alcohol.
Oh, I mentioned it at the end.
At the end, yeah, the
Yeah.
first email they got from you did not say anything about that there will be alcohol on it. They just you just threw this out to them that this is what we're thinking of doing in this vehicle. And so there was a little concern about that, why? Because then it was in the newspaper that the rail trail has, committee
pissed
has,
off about that.
yeah, has approved this, and it's like, no, they didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's still some concern, size-wise. And then again, I've talked to other people who are very health conscious who run on the trail, and it's like their thoughts were, this isn't promoting a healthy environment on the trail, just because
Groups exercising?
drinking.
No.
Okay, I'm not opposed to drinking, and I'm not, and, as I said to the committee last night, I'm not fully with you also, but if it was without alcohol, I'd have a little bit more approval of it. But there's still the whole thing of the size and yeah, but anyway, so it's out of the Rail Trails Committee hands anyways, because it's over here, but there was just, little bit of thoughts, the people.
No, I get
yeah.
it.
But, I'm not against drinking. I go on bike rides, and at the end I drink, but it's at the end I drink. I went to Ireland,
Annette, you're on
from bar to
camera,
bar.
Yeah.
But it's the whole, being on the vehicle and drinking. I know that's a big part of, bringing this business in, but I just, anyways.
Counsel.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think a lot of this has to do with, like, we talk a lot about the environment, like protecting the environment and the intent of use in the city a lot. And I think Councilor Conant and Councilor Derby have kind of touched upon that and earlier that I think this is really cool. I mean, like, and if we had like an entertainment district, like you see in a lot of other cities where these are in operation, like I would have like 0 reservations. In fact, I'd even look into figure out ways to have a kind of like a restriction on open container because it makes sense. It makes sense with the application, but I agree that the rail trail, I mean, it's like so out there to talk about the use of the rail trail as kind of like a consuming on the public way that's really what gets me. And it doesn't go really with the nature of the city. I mean, I guess if you told me
That's
that
what's
like.
so cool about it, though. It's so different. Than
It is
everything
very
around
cool
here.
and it is very different. I won't disagree with you there. I mean, if we had somehow magically had like Cottage Street was a pedestrian
I know,
mall and there were no.
you know what, an 8-foot wide.
Yeah, and they could go up and down Cottage
Yeah.
Street. I almost
You're
would
the
argue
first
that they-
customer.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. I'd be
Yeah.
the second. I'd pay for your ticket.
Oh.
But we don't, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
And I know that to you, it seems like we're being like, especially like me, and I don't like seeing myself this way, but like we seem like we're being real hard asses about it. Like we're really trying hard to do our job, and I think that unfortunately you have to sometimes kind of like be very level-headed and strict about these things, I guess, right? And I think, but again, I think that like, I agree. I want to see you succeed. I think this is a really cool thing to bring to Easthampton under the right circumstances and the right guidelines. And if we can kind of develop those guidelines, and I mean, I think I agree with Councilor Derby. If you park at Millside parking lot on Food Truck Fridays every other Friday starting soon, and their anniversary party coming up.
They pay you for.
They don't. But yeah, I mean, like, and yeah, have people come out and check it out. I mean, I think that's a way to go. I do
Right.
think that it's good to try to develop.
Oh, we're gonna do
guidelines
that.
sooner rather than
Hands
later.
down.
Yeah.
Or you can go there.
Hands down, hands up, man. I mean, either way.
Well, and you could probably even like coordinate with those types of events and go, you know, have people meet you at Fort Hill for a beer and then you bring them to Food Truck Friday, you know? And I mean, and that could be kind of like an interesting way to start.
Yeah.
It's not as big of a trip, but it's something that probably people. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to do business, you know. But I mean, I think that there
They're
are.
going to ask you to be an investor soon.
Right? I believe that there will be some viable ways for you to be able to make this work, and I truly think that once people become acclimatized, and you know, and maybe we come up with some creative ideas in the future, like, well, you know, like there's a zone where you can. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know. But I think that there could be potentially. I don't think that this. It's definitely not something we're not trying to be negative or against it. I think we're trying to be realistic and do our due diligence.
Mhm.
I got you all a present to put on your fridge.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yes.
Bring from Fort Hill.
Nice.
Mhm.
Oh, look at that.
I like the Food Truck Friday idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you running people from Fort Hill down to Food Truck Friday and.
But
Because there's better parking.
But is Fort Hill gonna be pissed off that we filled their parking lot with people that aren't in the brewery?
I mean,
Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
You can ask them.
Knowing them as I do.
you know, you can, or they can probably. Well, I don't want to. You can figure that part out. I'm not gonna- But
Well, this is going on in the fridge.
Yeah. Thank you.
so, I mean, I'd really like to see them succeed, and I think, my being up to date with minutes should not be used as an example, but I would volunteer to help write up, you know, some guidelines. So next week we have
our joint public hearing.
a joint public hearing.
What are you, behind like till last May?
No, I'm just behind a few, I could.
Alright, so I'll tell you
when's
our
our
next-
So when's our next meeting
next
after the
week,
next
isn't
public
it?
hearing?
It's,
next,
well, we
yeah,
have
In theory.
one.
in theory.
Next week.
Next week is the joint public hearing,
Wait, what?
isn't it? Isn't today
Yes.
the? Today the
Wednesday.
30th?
Tomorrow.
Yes.
So tomorrow's,
City council, so it would be.
tomorrow's,
the
so
No, but
the 7th is our joint
we have our
public
joint public
council.
hearing.
Oh, with planning.
planning
Oh, I
board.
was thinking public.
No,
Okay.
so that
Yes.
means that our next
Why do I
meeting,
have ordinance written down for the 14th.
and,
Because
well,
that's with the,
Did I do that wrong?
I mean, do you guys want
Is that
to,
right?
do you want to swap out?
except we're not.
Oh, it,
Do you want, well, we could swap out the 14th for the 21st,
And not do, oh,
and
I
not
see.
do the 21st?
No,
No?
I would rather we don't meet the week of city council.
Okay.
So scratch the
oh, I
14th
can't
and
meet
make
the
it the
14th
21st.
anyways.
Okay, so
Well, that's
21st.
that's when the budget meetings start.
Right.
I can have a robust
By the 21st.
proposal by the 21st. And some minutes too.
Oh,
I
good.
doubt it. I am skeptical.
Okay.
Well, if this weren't a public meeting, I would put
I
a
know
wager
you
on
would,
it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our next meeting, so next week
Next
is
week
the,
is the 7th is a joint public hearing
and
with
then
the
the
planning board.
21st, we're back on cadence,
Back-
which is
yes.
second and fourth Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Got it.
So we'll meet the 21st and the 28th?
21st, and then
No.
not the 28th. The
But the 28th.
4th.
But the 28th is the fourth
This
Tuesday.
job is hard.
I know.
We can't do dates. What's
Right,
today?
the first-
30th?
No.
The
Yeah,
next-
the
It's the
first
Second.
the first Tuesday of May is the 7th.
It should be the 7th, would
But
be our
that's the
first
first-
of the
It's-
month.
yeah.
So first and third. Well,
First
no.
and
Is it
we're
first
gonna be
and third,
first and
second
third.
and fourth?
It's usually second and fourth.
Second
And you
and fourth.
wonder why nothing.
Okay.
It's just that we didn't have a Tuesday.
Who's on
The
first?
first day.
I
Who's on
understand.
first?
So we're doing the first and third for May, and
Yeah,
then,
and then the second and fourth for June.
Okay, so that would be the 11th and the 25th.
Mm.
Yes,
It's the 4th and the 18th.
but that's the
Okay.
first
And
and
I'm
the
gonna have to
third.
miss this because I'm going
That's the first and the
upstairs.
third, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so
Why?
let's stay with the first.
Why? It's
That's up to you. You just
the
you
city
tell me.
resident.
Yeah, well, because it's not a city council,
The climate
you know, so
change
because
and
the
disaster
Right,
preparedness.
well, that's why I thought this
I
is
wanna
we're
see
meeting on
that.
off.
Yeah, we're meeting off the city council, so
So
if
it's
it's
the-
first and third, that's
As I
fine.
walked
the
in
first and
tonight,
third
oh,
is city
we're on
council.
camera, I'm not going to.
What are you talking about, May?
Of June?
Of
June is
No,
second and fourth.
June is second and fourth.
For city council?
Yeah.
No,
No.
for this.
No, look.
Right, that's what I was asking.
Second and fourth for this.
Let the record show.
I'm going to
Yeah.
another
So just-
So the
meeting.
11th and the 25th.
Just be aware that tomorrow is May 1st and we have a city council
And
meeting.
it's a
Yes.
meeting.
And so then the 4th is the second week.
Got any
And we do
alcohol
not
on the
have a
bike
city
now?
council
Because we
meeting.
could really use
And
some.
then the 11th would be the third week. We do not, and we have a city council meeting, and the 18th would be the fourth week because we do not have a city council meeting.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
The first full week.
It's because Wednesday falls on the
Just
first.
let me know a couple of days in advance when you need me, because you've lost me.
Okay.
Is it okay if we stay with the 4th and the 18th?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Alright.
Of what
Okay, so
month?
when's the next?
So the next one is the 21st.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
And
the 4th
then
the 18th
in
of-
June.
But as of
4th
now,
and the 18th.
I mean,
Right,
you
that's-
guys are
so
free
just-
to, do
Okay.
your thing.
Yeah,
So the
we're gonna
first and
start
the
posting the
third.
schedule and stuff soon,
Yes.
so.
Okay.
So the 4th and the 18th of June is when we are meeting.
The first and the third week.
Fine.
I'm just
I
confirming
don't know
that.
why it's not the second and fourth, but it doesn't
I know.
matter.
And I would say definitely call Dan Rist,
Yeah.
and potentially the other.
Can you all send me a selfie of these on your fridge, please?
You're like, let's go on the track.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Let's see, so, sorry.
Okay, so we have.
Wait, let me I just wanna, sorry, I know we
Yep,
just
no
did
problem.
this.
No problem.
So we have the joint public hearing, then the 7th.
And what's
Yes.
that for?
That's
For cannabis equity and
Oh,
zero
right.
lot lines.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we haven't even voted on zero lot lines yet.
We don't need to. We'll generally.
Oh, it's in the planning
It
board.
goes to, yeah.
I'm with you.
Yep.
Okay, there's no ordinance meeting on the 28th of May,
No.
right?
Correct.
Okay then.
All right, so, we're,
Okay.
okay.
So I think Peg had wanted to bring up the welcoming community.
Yeah, I just want to give you a couple of little updates.
Okay.
Apropos of nothing other than it's new information.
Okay.
So I met yesterday with the personnel director of Easthampton, Jane.
Okay.
Because as you know, the ordinance is not just the police. We focused a lot on the police,
Yeah.
but it's also city of
Citywide.
Easthampton employees.
Yeah.
And a couple of questions I posed to her were, do you ask immigration status when you employ someone? She said, well, not not directly, but there's the old I-9.
Yeah, you have to fill out that
Yeah.
form. Yeah.
So the I-9 comes into play, that's legal, she can't do anything about it. So, the next question I asked was, let's say I am an undocumented immigrant, I cannot give you the documentation you need. So now you know that I'm undocumented.
Mhm.
What do you do? And she goes, absolutely nothing.
Right, it's like
She
don't
said,
ask, don't tell.
nothing
type of
happens.
thing.
I said, you're not gonna call? She said, nope.
Yeah.
I said, sweet.
Yeah.
So check that box.
Okay, good.
Then I went to Lindsay, who was on the licensing board, and I said, I want to get a liquor license.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ask me if I am? Hi, Mayor. We are. Are you gonna sit in with us? Yeah, I was just gonna give an update.
Cool.
Okay.
Pull up a chair or seat.
So I met with Lindsay of the liquor licensing thing and asked her, in the course of doing a liquor license, is there a question on there, are you
Citizen.
a citizen? And the answer to that is yes, that's a question.
Hmm.
And that is a reason to be denied a liquor license. Yes, by the state.
It's by the state.
Yep, the S, whatever it is.
The
Is that a
ABCC?
state
ABCC.
form? Is that a state form?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's part of the application.
Yeah.
Okay, but
It's hard
doesn't
to
our
get.
language say something like not, I'm just paraphrasing, like not in violation of
Right.
state laws or
Right.
something, so
I'm-
we can't not, right,
No,
yeah.
I'm not asking.
I know, I'm just like, yeah.
Here's where I want to have a little bit of play on it. So, what's happening? Eyes right here, guys.
Yeah.
I'm right here
Sorry.
with
Be
you,
here
Peg.
now, be here now.
I'm mindful.
Okay. So, the next thing I wanted, so what I learned from that is, so the liquor board would say to Lindsay, this application is being denied, and they would check the boxes of why.
Right.
And Lindsay would take that to the licensing board and say, denied.
Right.
Here's why. She would first go to the applicant and say, can you resolve this if it's an easy thing to resolve?
Sure.
That's not something you can resolve. But
Mhm.
where I had a problem with this is then they go to the liquor licensing board, and the board, they tell, the reason this person is not getting a license is they are not a citizen. All of that I'm fine with, except for the fact it's a public meeting.
Mhm.
And so I would like to go back to Kelly Ritchie,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like to ask her if in the course of when they're debating it or whatever, and they're like, it's denied, can we not be real specific in
Or
a
could they
public
go into
forum
executive session?
about that?
Yeah.
Like, do we need to talk about it, or can you just say denied?
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Is that a local local requirement or is that a state requirement
What?
that they give the reason?
well,
Do you have to give a reason or could you just say it's denied?
Well, they would give a
They
reason to
didn't
the
meet-
applicant. I mean,
Right.
well, yeah. I mean, I just don't know if we need to, in a public forum, be that specific. And that's the question I want to ask Kelly. Like, in their public forum, can they only say this application is being denied?
Mhm.
Do they have to say why publicly? Certainly they have it and they file it and they know it and they might talk to the person and say this is why. I just don't know that we need to go into public, that we need to broadcast.
It's a public document.
so someone could do a
Sure.
request for it.
But do we need to put it, and those are recorded?
I mean, I also think though at the end of the day, so I hear what you're saying, I'm playing semi-devil's advocate. So the individual filling out this form will know that they're filling out a form that asks them about immigration status and has the option
Mm-hmm. All
to
it
answer
says is,
yes.
are you a citizen?
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then the board apparently needs appropriate documentation to that effect.
Right. But I guess that, right.
Well, I'm imagining if someone wasn't a citizen, they'd probably just get a proxy who is a citizen.
Or
Are
an
you a
LLC.
U.S. citizen?
No.
Yes, no?
No, I understand that, but I wonder, like, they know that they also know that they're filling out a publicly
Right.
accessible form.
No,
Yeah, that's the state form. I mean, that,
I don't, yeah, I know what, yeah, I know what
yeah,
you're saying.
I mean, it's not, I'm not gonna, this is not the hill I'm gonna die on, I just want you to know that. But I think I'm gonna ask the question anyway.
I think it's a great question. I think it's in the spirit
I
of.
get that it's all public and everything, but if we don't have to on camera point to somebody and say, you're not a citizen, I would prefer that we not have to do that. But, you know, again, I'm not gonna fall on the sword for that one. I just thought it was interesting.
It is
Mhm.
interesting.
It is
My
interesting.
next conversation, sorry, I'm gonna have a conversation with Kelly. My next
Can I just,
I don't think you can talk about the licensing.
I can talk about citizenship.
Okay,
Uh,
oh, all right, go.
So-
Loopholes everywhere.
Any municipal or state or federal, you know, form that asks if you're a citizen or not, say like an I-9, it's not I think the connotation of being a citizen or not being a citizen isn't negative. It's just a certain connotation or other policy outside of our control. So I would just say, you know, that the question, any question on the form now or historically has just been a yes or no in how it's given rights under state and federal law. Just for them.
Yeah, and so you probably weren't in here when I mentioned that I talked to Jane yesterday. And really my concern, because I totally get the I-9 and that's a reason to not be an employee and we're not asking any of that. All I said to Jane was, if you find out that they are not a citizen, what do you do? She goes, I thank them for their application and they go on their merry way. I said, okay, that's all I need to know.
Well,
And she goes, she
yeah.
doesn't tell anybody, it's not broadcast anywhere. I said, that's all I need.
Well, you can also be a non-citizen with a
Appropriate
visa.
paperwork,
Right.
no.
It
Yeah.
doesn't ask about
I was
documentation. it's just
shortcutting
about-
the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
there's
No.
a lot of ways you can provide the documentation and be hired here, but at the end of the day, if all those fail, it's not something Jane's gonna pick up the phone and call ICE.
No, but I'm saying even so too with the licensing board. I mean that citizenship question is kind of nebulous, and this is for the reasons I just said.
Right.
That like there could be a lot of. It doesn't mean that you're.
Don't have a green card or don't have a
Yes,
visa.
there's
Right.
an asterisk, oh,
Or MasterCard,
manager,
yeah.
the manager of the establishment must be a US citizen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, so I have a question. Speaking of turning over stones,
Yes.
have you talked to the superintendent?
So, had you let me continue.
I'm so sorry.
The
please.
semicolon to my sentence was, my next conversation
Okay.
is going to be with Sue Colby and the superintendent.
Okay. To find out what kind of information they require when a new student enrolls.
And what they do with any information that they may find out where someone is undocumented. What do they do with that? And if the answer is nothing,
Mhm.
then they
So I
will be
assume it is.
abiding by any future ordinance we make.
Okay.
So
Wonderful.
next conversation with the superintendent.
So that's what's going on there. I'm
Good update.
trying to check all of
And we're still waiting on the. I will email the lawyer again to find out what is. Oh.
Oh, is this the update?
Oh.
Okay, wait, hold on.
So,
Wait. I want to give you my full attention.
Update from the
Okay.
mayor.
Update
Mm-hmm.
from.
Mayor Nicole Luncheon.
No, I have that part.
Is it a capital L-A small
I just-
c or
I-
a big C?
I just wrote
LLC.
NLC. I'm sorry, MNLC.
So yes, so the ordinance as it stands is with the city attorney, and it is still under review.
Okay.
But there's also an interesting, and it's under review regardless of what happened with Department of Justice decision out in Boston, Lessing's decision, but it does add a little bit of a wrinkle and another, not a wrinkle, but like a wait and see of what that will mean, because now there are lawsuits
Is
from
that
state.
the penalty?
It's
Yeah, when
the
they,
judge
Lessing,
Oh,
yeah,
right.
when
and
the
the
judge.
clerk
Oh.
let the guy out the back door.
That to me is not all that complex, because there was a crime committed.
Yeah.
Right.
So, to me, that's off the table. Like, and I talked to the chief about this on Friday, that, to me, that example is kind of clear.
Yeah.
In that individual was there because they committed a crime. And the crime was, he was not a good guy.
Right.
And in that scenario, as with all scenarios where someone has committed a pretty, serious crime, that this then is off the table.
Mhm.
That all bets are off, because we are not, nor do we want to be in the business of protecting criminals.
Right. I think the crux is, and it's not like And I agree. I don't think that really has a huge impact on our ordinance necessarily, because I feel like what it does is it sends a message. If you go to court, then you're fair game for ICE, and that could potentially impact people that are going as witnesses and people that like. I think that's the
Because
Well,
you're
that's
outside
different.
now of a local enforcement agency.
Right, that's
well,
outside.
That's two. And but the other thing too, again, is our ordinance specifically is for people reporting crimes, not for people who committed crimes.
Right. Well, because once they get fingerprinted, they're in the system.
Yeah.
Right, and we don't disagree with the fact that, yeah.
So, and to that end, if you are, so the way that the chief, and I'll try and say this back in a way that I understood him to say, that yes, primarily it's for reporting and being a victim, absolutely. But there is that middle space of I'm driving down the road, I don't have a brake light, I get stopped, I don't have a driver's license, and I am, which, and I agree with the police, that is a chargeable offense, not having a driver's license, and we're not gonna tell them don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But they would go to a holding cell, or they would go and fill out a form and be released. All of that would still happen, and they would go in the system. But what would not happen is that when their process of that offense is done, they're not gonna hold them 48 more hours
Extra.
so that ICE can come and get them. That is deemed to be arresting the person,
Mhm.
and for the thing that they were brought in on, they do not have the authority
To arrest.
to arrest them.
Right.
The only
It's a
way they
civil
can hold
offense.
them is if a bail bondsman makes that demand of the local law enforcement, and none of that would have happened, so they wouldn't do it.
He sent something
I
out.
almost
Did you
sound
see
like
the
I know
chief
what I'm
sent
talking
something out
about.
earlier, like this evening? Did you read that? I didn't read it.
It's just,
yeah.
he's reiterating his
Oh, is
thing
it-
that he sent out last May.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Very good. Thanks for all your work on this.
Yeah. Thanks for
Very
the update.
valuable.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like, oh, wait a minute, I never. Yeah, he's working on it.
And so,
Do we,
Yeah.
capital L, small n, big C. Do we have a sense as to how long I'm working on it equals? Like, so he's had it since the 19th. So should we expect this month, or should we expect next week, or do we have any sense? Does he have a long backlog of stuff he's?
He does. He does. I mean, it'll be sooner rather than later. I mean, I can,
Okay.
and honestly now, he's looking at it under the color of the lawsuits that keep piling up, the DAs.
If he needs any, information, I don't know. I'm happy to help him out. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but so regardless of Lessing and all of that stuff out in Boston, it was not going to be ready this
Today,
week.
yeah.
So I just,
So I'm gonna think that we're probably not even gonna have a public hearing until June, because we only have one more city council meeting this month.
oh,
I mean, that's probably a logical assumption. Okay. Alrighty then, thank you, Mary.
no,
you.
thank you for letting me pop in.
would you like to discuss your lot lines briefly before our next week hearing?
Oh, sure. I
we
mean, I
have-
don't know if I
So,
do, yeah.
so we have an understanding of what they are, and we don't go into that meeting.
Yeah, I don't have that info with
I
me,
do.
but I have a pretty good
And I'm-
understanding.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
So I think from the presentation that we got from the planner, basically what they're asking for is us to allow zero lot lines to be implemented at the 1 Ferry Street property and potentially in the rest of the mill industrial zone, which could allow specific parcels of property to not have to meet setback and frontage requirements, which
And
for
coverage requirements.
and coverage requirements. For example, and that would affect, even though it says on here that building, the electric building that's between Eastworks and INSA, which is this building right here, it says that it's an existing zero lot line, which I guess makes sense
Do we
because.
have those?
Well,
Or was it
yeah,
like somehow
no, we
created
do.
for
That
it?
was created for. So the existing ones are here. So we have a zero lot line.
Walls.
All the walls are zero lot lines at 180, 150, 187 or whatever that is. But what this would allow is because there's a zero lot line between the electric house and INSA, but it's because it's Eastworks. So it would allow there to be zero lot lines in Eastworks. So this building 8 at Eastworks, this electrical building could be, and basically would allow them to be split so they could be sold as a separate property, which
Right.
I think
And develop.
could really encourage more development
Absolutely.
because
I agree.
Eastworks, is so big
Yep.
that it could potentially allow a new owner to come in and develop some of those things into something
Yes.
different and
Yeah.
unique.
And specifically to the coverage, the biggest issue I think with the electrical building is the coverage thing. So someone
Right.
they raised that building, if they went to build it back,
Mhm.
they'd have to build a smaller building.
Smaller building.
So the current proposal allows them to build.
About the exact footprint.
Right.
Um,
My only question, the frontage stuff, I don't really think at the end of the day it makes a difference, but I'm just trying to like think of a situation where you'd want to require some sort of frontage and what that means. But I just don't, that's the only thing that kind of sticks in my mind. I don't know.
okay. So maybe that's
I mean,
that's a
it's-
question that we ask to Jeff. and-
Right, it's more like, like, is there some sort of, are we conferring some sort of disadvantage, like in terms of, I don't know, accessibility or appearance, like, I don't think so. I mean, basically
Yeah, I
what
don't
it's saying
think
is
so
it just
either.
allows them to build right up to the public way,
Well,
right? But are there
no,
still
no, no, no. I
acceptable-
don't. I don't think so.
Yeah,
So frontage, I believe, in this circumstance is a certain amount of curb in front of the building in order to be able to have that be a viable lot. So, for example, if you want to have a residential lot that you can build a house on, you
Yeah,
need to have
you have to
100
be-
feet of
yeah,
frontage.
right.
It's not that you have to be 100 feet away from the public road. It's just you need to have 100 feet of curb in front of the property.
I see.
So if I'm not misunderstanding that, I don't think it's not a setback to the road.
Okay.
It's a minimum requirement to allow a certain amount of space to be occupied by a building.
Okay, all right.
So but
I'll
that's
do some research
that's something
on
that
that.
we can I believe to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's
but we
more of a
can confer.
question I have. It's not like
Sure.
a hang up for me. I'm just like trying to wrap my mind around like, well, if we built every single building with no frontage, like what does that mean
Right.
exactly? And I'm not a city planner, so like when he talks about some of these things, I'm trying to like think like when you talk
Right.
about industrial frontage, it's a little different than
Yeah,
residential
yeah.
Right,
frontage too.
right, yeah.
So that's all I'm trying to.
Because if you look at One Ferry Street and you look at the amount of frontage they have compared to let me see. Oh, that's right
Like,
here.
I'm looking
Yeah.
at it going, huh.
That's not. Let's see if I have. I don't know if he gave us a One Ferry picture. But I would say that if you look at One Ferry Street, the frontage that's here
Mhm.
probably would not be. It wouldn't allow for this amount of concentration of building. So for example, say in a residential, you need 100 feet of frontage. So for this thing, you'd probably need 1,000 feet. So if we just separated this building into its own lot, it might only have like 500 feet of frontage.
I see.
You know,
Okay,
so-
yeah. Mhm.
And Jeff can prove me wrong, but I'm pretty sure I think I got that one.
So frontage is different than setback.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think I'm confusing the two.
Yep. So anyway.
Well, that makes sense, and that goes back to the whole. Yeah. Okay.
So I think, but it's good to clarify those things at the public hearing to make sure that we are on the same page. And I'm sure Jeff will have a presentation for us and let us know. But I mean, from what I've seen of this, and from what I've seen how it's been implemented in the mills as it stands, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that hopefully this, if my understanding is correct, hopefully this will be a pretty easy decision for
Yeah.
us.
So question, just for clarification. So, let's say that the one cottage building over there, we enforce 0 lot lines. In
Yep.
the sense that that little building that says one cottage street could theoretically be divided off into its own business with
And
0
sold
lot lines,
separately.
right?
Yep.
But if you had certain frontage requirements that exceeded the size of that building, it would run kind of counter.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it because it wouldn't have the frontage.
Right. So by eliminating the frontage requirements, it allows everything to kind of work. Is
Yep.
that- okay. Thank you.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But I think that's something we'll need to have confirmed. But I do believe, and that would be interesting. I wonder what's in that little building. It's cute. If we had a parking
I
garage,
bet
here,
there were
people-
horses in there. I bet it was like a
like a little stable.
barny thing, yeah.
Yeah, where they that's very possible.
Park your horse before you come in. I mean, that's what it looks like. It looks kind of smallish.
let's just say it is.
Let's, because
You
let's
know,
live that.
I mean,
So
we-
here's
Live in that world.
a question that I think that would be good for us to ask. Is there a reason that extending zero lot lines into downtown business wouldn't make sense? So for example, these buildings that are here, like the little coffee place,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what if the landlord of that building wanted to sell that the coffee shop, that part of the building? If zero lot lines were allowed in downtown business, then they could
Oh,
put the
because
property
it's,
lines.
because it's a fully used.
Because it's a full unit.
He owns a building.
Yeah,
I think that's a worthy question.
I mean, just a thought.
It is. So right. So you'd have to.
And I don't even know if it works like that, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either, because like for instance, and that's like what does that is the zero lot lines, does they extend above and below? In other words, right?
Like multiple levels.
Yeah, because so for instance, in the case of the coffee shop, there's space above it, and
Goes
so
straight up, I think.
yeah, I
It's
don't.
like an
That's
imaginary.
just it's an interesting question.
Interesting.
to
So we can ask
yeah.
that. Okay. Good. Do we have anything else we want to talk about tonight?
What is happening with equity next week? Is it at planning as well?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just.
Where are we with that?
Were you?
Well, they
Like,
discussed
you
it.
asked
were
some
there?
questions, yeah, and
Yeah.
they asked
Yeah, we were all-
questions.
I think we're just deliberating
Do
amongst.
we owe them a revision to anything? It's
think
just
so.
still more conversation.
It's
Yep.
more conversation. They
Okay.
didn't really ask for any like a revised.
Okay,
Yeah, and I think there may be.
there were no takeaways.
Can I just say, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. I probably already mentioned it, but there's a new documentary on Netflix that's worth watching as it relates to equity. It's called The
Yes.
Grass is Greener.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm gonna try to watch that.
And so
prior.
I
How
would.
long is it?
It's probably like an hour and 20 hour.
Okay.
It's a little over an hour, but I would say it's worth watching for multiple reasons. A lot of those reasons are because it backs up all the things that I said when we were deliberating.
I mean, I
but
think everything you said was basically an appeal for equity.
right, and but it also does specifically address equity towards the end of the movie, and I think they do a pretty good job of
Okay.
stating it.
Cool.
Grass is greener.
So I would say,
Yes.
and once you see that, like letting other people know that it's a worthwhile documentary to enhance understanding around some of the issues, cannabis and equity. So,
Cool.
Sweet.
wonderful. All right. Anything else?
When do we this is more of a.
He wants to know when our next meeting is. And I'm gonna come across the table and slap it.
No, no, but you know me too well.
May 21st.
We have two meetings though.
Oh
Not
my
not ordinance.
God.
We have two city council meetings
Correct,
in June.
1
Two, yeah.
and 14,
June
15.
But once June is
Oh,
over,
June.
then July and
Yeah.
August. Wait, do we have two in June?
I don't know. I
I don't
haven't
think we
written
do.
down.
I think it might be only one in June.
I think we
Oh,
did one.
maybe I'm okay. I don't know. Why do I have all these? Huh.
Because you
I-
just put in one repeating thing.
I probably did, but I also might have.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I'll look. There's an email from Barb, so that's okay. I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well I would entertain.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.